Jim Storms,
Oh yeah.
welcome to the Van Cave, my brother.
Hey.
And I know you're not a beer guy. You've never been, but we do have a stock, and you've got what is it? The Not Your Father's.
Yeah, not your father's root beer.
It's extra cool because it has a sailboat on the cap.
Yeah,
You may need a
uh,
deal here, so
uh,
pop that open for you.
this
you go.
is a test of your manlyhood to be able to open it. You know.
Yeah, that's how you start with some of these, man. I'm gonna do good old-fashioned Shiner Bock. We talked about this during the Brewer episode, and it occurred to me I have not had a Shiner in a while, and so we're going to do that. So, Van Cave folks, I'm very happy to have this dude here, all the way down from the DFW area, where he is a herder of code heads, right?
Yes, yes. I stand in front of other coders, which is like herding cats. So
Right. This guy has been a computer savant all of his life, and damn sure ever since I've known him. And we met actually in two channels. We had a couple classes together in school.
yes.
And common friends through Civil Air Patrol, and you were in Civil Air Patrol for a while. Civil Air Patrol keeps coming up.
Yeah, it seems to be a common theme.
Yeah, it does. And man, I'm gonna jump into it. You've coded all kinds of stuff, all kinds of software.
Yeah.
You've done everything from banner ads to
Software for the back end of companies like AT&T, and if you remember them, Blockbuster did their email system back in the day.
airliner maintenance software.
Yes, airline maintenance software. If your plane didn't crash, you're welcome.
And we've planned this for a while. And you said you're from here. You live in DFW with your lovely bride. You met through me.
Yes. In fact, she was dating you first.
Yeah. We went out a couple of times. Met her through yet another CAP buddy, and we went out a couple times. Just it didn't hook up. We were friends, and we all worked together at Water Wonderland, which is a water park here. We called it Wally World.
Yes.
And every day people ask me, what it was like to work there. It was like living a John Hughes movie every day of the week during the summer, right?
It really was, man. I cannot imagine a better teenage life.
Yeah, and so I can remember when you guys met because she was the girl at the golf booth, right? The mini golf booth.
Yes.
And we did everything from lifeguarding to the little kiddie park rides.
Yes.
And we went in early because we were geeks and we repaired the phone system.
Yes.
Remember doing that?
And the arcade sometimes.
Yeah. And here's a geek alert. I'll tell you guys up front, this is going to be a very geek-heavy episode. We are real geeks. We are not the modern day put on a Green Lantern shirt and say you like video games. We're the real thing from back before being a geek was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that would say
it was not cool.
Yeah, way before it was cool.
So you had we're gonna center around a project you and I did for a number of years, and we'll get to that. But I want to talk about what it was like knowing you back then. You had a garage full of CP/M gear.
Yes.
Right. So CP/M was an operating system before the IBM PC that became Windows. And you were in tight with a bunch of IT people in the oil business. And so coming out of the 80s boom, the early 80s boom, and people were changing systems, you took all their crap home, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I had several systems from several companies that either went bankrupt and I bought at the auction, or they simply were dumpster dives, or they were literally, please come take this.
Yeah. You had I remember a printer. It was a dot matrix printer the size of this table that had I took both of us to lift it. It has like a cast steel base.
Yes.
And it sounded like an MG42 machine gun when it fired off.
Yes. In fact, I think I still have hearing loss from that particular printer.
You had the first, I forget what kind of drives they were, but looked like a washing
Oh, yes.
machine with the sealed.
They were called Winchester 30, or they called them 3030s, Winchester 3030s, because they were 30 meg on the top, 30 meg on the bottom.
Oh, okay. 30 meg. Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So
Meg, not gig.
it's hard to believe.
Meg. That was big time.
Yeah, that was big time. Internet was experimental infancy
Yes.
at the time. And where we're going with this, the way I'm going to quote Tim Kreitz. Tim Kreitz is taken in vain here a lot. The way the average the average pecker would, that's what Tim says, the average pecker would got online in those days was a 2400 baud modem.
Yes,
right?
The wonderful sound.
Yeah, I meant to play the handshake. We'll have to pull that out. So, you guys watch War Games? That was the 300 baud that you actually put on the cradle.
Yes.
Right? Except we had the U.S. Robotics 2400 baud.
Yes.
That was,
complete with flashing lights.
Yeah, I had the flashing lights and some kind of terminal software. In fact, I remember I probably got it from you or maybe my mom's office, but at one time, so I could have my computer running at the same time before, true multitasking, I had gotten a dumb terminal, just
I could have come from me. I had several.
Yeah, well, my mom's office went to PCs from a dumb terminal. And that's back when the word mainframe was a real thing, too.
Yes.
And that was just your thing, man, the old computers.
Yeah. Well, and to me, they were new computers. They were the thing. And it sparked my imagination. And I don't know if just talk about part of you. It's just part of you.
Yeah. It definitely is for you. I credit you. I'm kind of an above average user. I'm not a code ed or anything, but I can do a lot of things. I can fix things, and I'm the guy in my office that people sometimes come to before they call IT.
In other words, you'll do it and IT won't. So.
Yeah, and it may be, hey, is this something simple or is this something I need to call IT for? Because and it was and again, it goes back all the way back to you and what we did. But back then, we wouldn't call each other. We would call bulletin boards.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're going to explain this better than me, but and maybe in relation to what it is today. What was a bulletin board?
So bulletin boards were at the time just a computer that was always turned on and always ready to accept your call via modem. And one of the reasons why I wanted to drag you into my endeavors with the bulletin board is you lived halfway between two cities.
Yeah.
And so a bulletin board was a wonderful place to leave messages, download software, as it soon would become, and do other sorts of nefarious things.
Well, the location was important because back then, kids, we had a thing called long distance charges.
Yes.
And if it was outside of a certain exchange, for instance, calling Odessa, the town next to Midland, with just a few miles separation, you had to pay long distance charges.
Yes.
And there's a little taint in between Midland and Odessa that's called terminal Texas.
Yes.
Because it's around the air terminal, the airport, that we had magic numbers that would call both cities and receive calls for free.
Yes.
So, yeah, that made me the hottest chick at the dance.
Yes.
In that thing.
And I'm like, hey, Matt.
Yeah. I remember that. And there were a few boards in existence, and like churches would have one. There were a few churches that had them, and then just most
Odessa
of it was just
College,
geeks.
yeah.
So you would log on to one of these things, and you'd see a menu.
Yes.
And by the way, it comes out at like typing speed. They just scroll.
Yes.
And it would have a message board with topics, not unlike Reddit or a forum or even a Facebook thread today.
Right. And a lot of people would create their own kind of universe individual people who would call in would frequently start these long threads of conversations, just the way you do in Reddit or Facebook today. And just like Facebook and Reddit today, everything was fair game.
Yeah, and unlike we had a conversation, we should have just recorded everything from the time you and I saw each other first this morning. This was a day, you have to understand, not everyone could use a computer. So you had to be a certain level of geek.
Yeah, just to connect. You had to be this tall to ride this ride.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you couldn't be just any idiot. You had to be at least smart enough to get your computer up and running.
And I thought of this earlier while I was being guarded in the bathroom by my dog. He was laughing. I went to take the pre-show tinkle, and Macy vigilantly guarded the door while I was in there. But there was no sharing. You didn't just share a meme. You didn't share a conversation. Everything had to be original.
Yeah, there was nothing. I mean, there was no concept of sharing. So you had to come up with everything from scratch, or you had to go through painstaking problems to download and upload the content.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And it was run by one or two people or three or however many we had, and it was just a different world. And I remember we ran role playing games on some of the deals,
And those were the first online games, and those were awesome. I mean, those were addictive, just like today. And
when you get into the submarine game, and we had Trade Wars, and we actually Trade Wars was it started getting, you talk about Gamergate.
Yes.
That's when we started having to go through and weed out fake accounts. Remember that?
Right, because people would create multiple accounts so they could help themselves.
Yeah, they were forming alliances in Trade Wars, and we were having to go in and break up who it was. And I remember the high tech way back then is if you figured a user was doing this, you would call the number to see if it was busy.
Yes, that was one way. Or the other dead giveaway is when they'd hang up and immediately that user always logged on right after the other user. I was like, there's something going on there.
We had to check the audit trail, they called it, on that. And so you came up with the idea to start a bulletin board, and I remember first thing, much to my mom's chagrin, we set it up and we were testing it just using our home line.
Right.
And we kicked around several different freeware things, and
I don't remember what we wound up using. I think it was called the Major BBS.
No, yes, Galacticom's Major BBS. Yeah. And I was really impressed because I remember you would buy software, and they would have an 800 number for like a tech support bulletin board system of their own, and you could log on, and it was done through Galacticom. It was Major. So I mean, it was a big deal, but we were, as far as anybody's ever been able to tell, the first multi-user system.
Yeah, in this area.
In this area,
right.
in Midland, Odessa. And it was called
Telegraph Road.
Yeah.
Yes.
We were trying to come up with a name. Telegraph Road is a song by Dire Straits from the 80s. We're both Dire Straits fans.
Okay, so he was a Dire Straits fan, and then I became a Dire Straits fan.
Right, yeah. I contaminated the world with that. And I still think Dire Straits is cool.
I do too. and I still name things Telegraph Road. If you go online and search from time to time, you'll see Telegraph Road.
Is that you?
That's me.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's cool. I do all of my stuff is Satriani songs.
Cool.
Like my wireless is Cool Number 9.
Cool Number 9. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So Telegraph Road, we actually had T-shirts made. If you feel like it, look up I think it's the Telegraph Road video or the Alchemy album live. Dire Straits. He's wearing a T-shirt, and I was gonna have one made and wear it today, and I just completely forgot about it. But it's a white T-shirt with 2 arrows pointed in, and then 2 arrows pointed out, like a two-way. That's And,
that would be cool. Yeah.
And we had T-shirt. Mike Spencer's mom made the T-shirts, and we talked about this earlier. we had the forums, the where people would converse in message form, like you would on Facebook or Reddit or whatever. We had email, and I was sitting here trying to think back as hard as I could. You and I probably had the first email conversation in my life in like 1987 or in 1988.
Yeah, it probably would have been 87. And yes, I think the first email and the first chat.
Yeah.
Because the machine was at your house.
Yep.
And you could be you were the sysop.
Yep.
So you could message people who were dialed in. And I can remember dialing in and us chatting online in 87.
We had the interesting thing about Telegraph Road, when we got 2 phone lines, I remember whatever was going on back then, you had a decent job, and you raked in more scratch than pretty much any of us, and you could afford all this. I was just barely buying gas. You got 2 lines put in there, and so you could chat 2 people. Any 2 people in the world could call in and chat with each other.
Yes.
And then the sysop, could come in and chat, and you could log on and be a regular user,
right?
Or you could kind of lurk around and see what's going on.
Yeah, and that's when sysops had power, and you could spy.
Yeah, sysop is the system operator, and I remember it had a page feature, and it would make the little PC board beep, that somebody wanted to talk to you, or whatever.
Yeah.
And we had problems back then, like you turn on your microwave now, and your wireless screws up. We had line noise.
Yes.
Because the lines would crackle, and it would break up characters and stuff. And
yeah, and it would screw up. You spent 3 hours downloading, and the last hour, line noise killed you.
And
your mother would pick up the phone.
Oh, yeah, if you didn't disable the call waiting, or if somebody picked
call
up.
Waiting, yeah,
you had to do that, or it would just blow you offline. But it was cool. You play games. We talked about the forums. We talked about the chat. And the download section was cool. At the time, there was a lot of freeware, shareware, I think it was called back then.
Shareware.
And you could get all kinds of little silly utilities, and then the pictures started.
Yes.
Then download speeds hit about 9,600 baud.
Yes, I think the reason for the faster download speed was purely because of pictures.
Yeah, just so you could get that sweet internet porn. So the first internet porn I ever saw was on Telegraph Road.
Right, and you would download forever.
It would take all day to download, and it was like 30 frames, man. It was like a half second.
Right.
There was a video, or a couple of videos, monochrome ones.
Well, they were like the GIFs.
Early GIFs. Yeah. And they had those, and then the pictures.
Yeah, and yes.
Because not everybody had a scanner then. That was was a big deal.
And then depending on the computer you had. So if you were unlucky enough to have a low-end computer, it really didn't do the pictures justice.
Yeah, that's true.
And so then all of a sudden you needed to buy a new computer. And I truly think that's what drove the PC revolution.
I could totally see that.
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah, because there were other boards. We weren't that big on it.
But there were other boards that were really big on it.
We didn't have the storage space.
Right. And I was also worried about some implications of if anybody in the conservative area of Midland, Odessa figured out what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah, when we were in the middle of Football Jesus, Texas, and you had porn. It was crazy. But again, and that was we're talking 10 megabyte hard drive was.
Right, that was huge.
That was enormous. And so there was that. We didn't have piracy that bad. It was kind of hard to pirate stuff. Back then, software was what they call literature protected. You remember that?
Yeah, so you had to have the manual, and it was hard. And they would set it up so you couldn't copy it. They would put it in these light red colors that wouldn't copy on a copier. Yeah.
Well, I got a job at a software store back then, and the funny thing about it, we had back then you could get things on a 3.5-inch floppy, and they still have 5 1/4.
Right.
I should have brought my 5 1/4 just to show the kids. Yeah, I still got one hanging in the office. And sometimes it was both. Sometimes it was sold either or just one. And the store actually had software that would crack the copy protection of the day.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the literature protection, but it
the
would crack the
copy.
copy protection.
Yeah.
And because if a person wanted to buy it in 5 1/4 and they only sold it in 3 1/2, well, we didn't want to turn a customer away. We would crack it, burn it to this other one, and then give it to them. And if it was literature protected, they got the manual. And man, I remember, I don't know if you do, we kind of had the moral, legal, ethical conversation about, do you realize how we could pirate software?
Pragmatically moral.
There you go. We elected not to. I want to say it's because we were not charmed by the potential, the amount of money we could make. We didn't have the storage space for porn or money.
Right. Well, and honestly, I've always had a moral side. It's hard to write code. It's hard to build this stuff. They need money, and honestly, I won't say I never copied software, but I could see the downside that went with that.
So for literature protection, so for the youngsters out there who've never done that, so you get the latest, greatest, newest game, and you would poke a disk in your computer and start the game, and it would say, turn to page 32 of the manual, first word in the third paragraph.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. Or in the back of the manual would be a page of tiny, tiny numbers printed in red ink, and you got this little plastic viewer.
Yes.
That you would slide over, like a cereal box toy. So you could read the secret code and you would type it in. And
yes, and those are really hard to copy with the copiers of the time.
Yeah.
And so and it was very time consuming to copy it by hand, so that was a really good copy protection.
Yep, that did work. That saved well, it cost me a lot of money because I couldn't bring all the really cool games home. And
Right. So one of the things, and this is going to give you some insight, after I had gotten bored with the game, I loved to break the copy protection. Physically go into the code, get the assembly language monitor out, step through the instructions, and remove the copy protection.
There you go.
It was like the special prize at the end of the game to remove the copy protection.
I never could do that. I got through a few of the first games, and then after that it was just over my head. I never.
Yeah. This was by hand. I just really wanted to be able to do that.
The last programming language I ever learned was Pascal. If that tells you how far I am out of the game. Yeah.
Pascal forever.
Yeah, but and the crazy thing about it, we had the conversation about the internet and just the online world today versus those days. And we saw doxing.
Yes.
Yeah, because everybody had handles.
Yes.
And there were people getting doxed and problems going on.
Yes, and we had to ban people.
We did, yeah. Well, the trade wars, cheaters, and stuff like that. We wound up having to kill accounts, and occasionally, we had a language monitor on. Yes. Telegraph Road that would actually.
It had a dictionary.
Yeah, it had a dictionary. I remember having to go in and change it because we got users from Sweetwater.
Right.
And it kept telling you can't use that kind of language in here. Sweetwater. What the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's got TWAT in it together. It's got the word twat when Sweetwater. So what the hell's going on? So we had to go in and change that. And but we'd get people that would rant or whatever. That is where the first time in my life I ever saw chat sex.
Yes. So being the sysop, you had a special eagle eye view.
Yeah, it was weird. I can remember when that happened because one of the guys, and it was funny, you have to understand all of these people lived within one area code.
Right, yes.
So they were all people in Midland, Odessa, and anywhere they could call in free because nobody wanted to pay whatever the exorbitant charges were.
It was terrible
at the time.
to call, yeah.
And so it was typically people you knew.
Right.
Or not typically.
new, but at least they
There were
were
a lot of people that you knew on there.
right, and there would only be like 1 or 2 degrees of separation because you lived in the same towns.
Yeah, and back then it wasn't 100,000 people.
Right.
Well, it was probably like 80,000. But anyway, so I'd get a phone call. Dude, your lines have been busy for like 2 hours.
Right.
And sometimes there were problems, sometimes there weren't. So I went in and looked, and we didn't have a limit, mainly because you didn't hang on line for an hour back then. There just
most
wasn't,
people didn't. It wasn't that much to do,
and
especially on our board.
That's one of the reasons we kept the files short and we didn't do pictures, is because
It'd take too long to download.
Yeah. So you would get in and you would play your games, which they're all turn-based, and you'd be done playing
30 minutes.
In 30 minutes and answer, take your turn in the Dungeons and Dragons game and play, and poof, you're done.
Right.
But these people have been hanging on there a while. And so there was a little screen that would tell you sort of what's going on. There's these 2 users, and an obviously male and an obvious female name, and they were in chat. So I'm like, oh, man, I got to check this out in the interest of...
Right, in the interest of running the system, right.
Yeah.
Being the system operator.
Yep, there it was, man. My first internet slam dance. They were going at it, and I was, wow, that's creative. And I thought this...
And this hasn't, I mean, people don't realize this was probably the first time this was happening. This was like a handful of times, and this was definitely probably the first time in this area because we were one of the few multi-line bulletin boards. Yeah,
and I'm watching and I'm thinking, okay, so do you type for a little while and then turn the crank, or is he going with one hand?
How does that work?
What is she doing? I bet she's not really doing anything, but she's saying she. And I watched this for a while till finally I thought, okay, in the interest of the
fair play,
operation of the BBS, we're just gonna have to end this. And fortunately, they quit themselves. It was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I came to its natural end, as such things do, apparently.
Yes.
And so. I also, the first catfishing incident, and it was horrible. Do you remember that?
No, I don't really.
Oh, there were a couple of guys in Odessa, and I mean, everybody's seen the internet meme. It says, bring me another Hot Pocket mom, or not now mom, I'm online being a badass, and it's the fat computer nerd kid in the basement.
Yeah.
If I can find that meme, I'll put it here.
Cool.
Right now. That guy was alive and well in the 80s, and I remember, I can't remember who did it to him. And this was after the couple were doing their thing. Guy A upset Guy B.
Yes.
And Guy B formed a fake account in a girl's name, and hit Guy A up for chat.
Yes.
And this happened over a while. They catfished for a while till they believed it, and then they did the chat thing, and he saved all of it.
Yeah, I vaguely remember
Guy
this.
B did it, and then Guy A, all I remember, it was a game I didn't play because I was so tired of administrating it.
Right. And by the way, thank you.
No worries. I think it was Trade Wars. But he got on a forum and published all of it.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah. So after that happened, he was banned for life, obviously. And that was the first catfish and like harassment, humiliation thing.
And so people think all this is new, and it's been going on since the 80s.
Dude, people were doing this shit with cave paintings.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure
You're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just our nature. I'll tell you something else that happened back then. I joined the Explorer Scout post at the sheriff's office.
Yeah, I remember. We actually all were kind of involved in that.
Yeah. And one day, one of the investigators calls me in. And they said, "Hey, you know a lot about this bulletin board stuff." And yeah. And this is like this is the future for the rest of my career. Hey, you know about this computer stuff? I need some help here. And I go, yeah. And there was one in Odessa. I can't remember it, but they were selling stolen computer gear.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it went on a while. I remember seeing stuff for sale there.
Uh-huh.
But I worked at a software store and got a discount, and you always had crap laying around your garage, and
Yeah.
and so I never went, but they were selling stolen gear.
Wow.
Helped them make a case on it. So that was like
Wow.
before Craigslist. We had some cat in
Gotcha,
Odessa
Odessa.
that was selling stuff like that.
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a couple of users got married.
Yeah. Now that was weird. That is a truly weird concept that people met online through our BBS and got married.
Yeah. And have you seen *Halt and Catch Fire* yet? I know I keep telling you about that.
I keep meaning to watch, but I haven't had
Okay. Everybody out there, if you really want to kind of get a sense of computing world back then, watch. It's an AMC show called *Halt and Catch Fire*. It ran a few seasons and quit, and it's a combination. It's a fictional story, but it's made up of real people and incidents. So the main character is one of the main characters is this coke-driven, womanizing, sexually ambiguous software developer who's a mix of Peter Norton.
So
and,
you just described almost everyone I work with.
Yeah, Peter Norton and the other one will come to me. Norton Utilities guy and whoever the other one is.
Semantic. I don't know.
Yeah. It'll come to me. Everybody's shouting that's watching this. All the geeks are shouting the name.
Yes, put it in the comments.
Those two guys are kind of fused into one character, and then another character is kind of Texas Instruments, Texas-based deal. But these people form. They're hinting that these people essentially formed AOL, like an AOL kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they called it Mutiny Software because they're coders and administrators that leave and they form it in this house. But they had a party.
Uh-huh.
Mutiny had a party. And I watched that party and I stopped it. And my wife was doing something else. I was like, Nicole, come here. This is a Telegraph Road party.
Yes.
It is. There was a guy who had a big house in Odessa, and he hosted a Telegraph Road party. And was that not the greatest collection of misfits and weirdos? Oh, my God, it was great.
And it's not your 80s party. It is I don't know how to describe a Telegraph Road party. It's not what you imagine.
No, it's not.
It is wild.
Yeah. It's and again, geeks were not what they are now. It's not a VidCon.
Right.
It's not those kind. It's not where some cute big-titted girl throws on horn room glasses and says, "I like Farscape," and I'm
or dressing up or I forget what it's called, but yeah.
Dude, the rest of these people couldn't get laid in a monkey whorehouse if they had a bag of bananas.
Right.
And then it was kind of like a lot of them.
But the few girls that were involved.
A few girls.
Yes, because it was mostly guys, honestly.
Yep.
But the few girls that were there could own the whatever they wanted.
Oh yeah.
So
those were some unusual times, to say the least. And it was a strange time to be a gamer.
Yes.
There was a lot going on in the gaming community, and I don't even know where to go with that. I barely game now.
And the games were more intellectual and more strategic. We didn't have the high-res graphics, and we definitely didn't have quick twitch, Halo style. It was strategic, and you waited for your turn to be over, or you... even the interactive games, you had a few seconds to react.
And consoles were for suckers back then.
Yeah, the consoles were 2600 or Nintendo, the low end Nintendo. What was it?
It was the second Atari.
5200.
Yeah,
something like that.
After the 2600 was the 5200 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Coleco had a
Coleco
pretty big
Vision.
one.
Yeah.
And then Nintendo's first couple and
right, GameCube. GameCube was about then, I think.
Was it?
It may have been before GameCube.
I didn't know that. No, I think it was later. But we sold software, and I never will forget the day in my software store that we got a box full of cartridges for Nintendo, and they made us put them up behind the counter, and it was just this. It was suddenly went from nerds and business people buying software to snotty nosed kids asking for you got any Nintendo tapes is what they would say.
Right? Yeah.
It's like, first of all, it's not a tape, you little dick. Second, go away because you don't have any money.
Yes.
But they were, it was kids and in the I'll flat out tell you I was arrogant back then as I am now, and people not smart enough to turn on a computer.
Yes. Again, you had to be this high to write.
Yeah, you had to be this high because it was just not. It was not a world for those kind. And I mean, imagine, man, and the online experience now. Imagine if there were no 14-year-olds, or very few. Imagine if grandma wasn't on it.
Yeah.
Imagine if the people who can't use an iPhone,
Yes.
the whole flip phone crowd. Not that they're bad people. I'm just saying technologically. I'm eliminating people from the technological standpoint. That's what you have left.
Right.
Online back then.
And these people would have had to been dedicated because you had to work to get online.
Yeah.
If you got online, it meant that you probably spent a good 4 or 5 hours gathering things together, reading, researching, finding the telephone numbers to call, that kind of thing.
I want to share with you, as I put on my glasses. My late mother, God rest her soul, put together a scrapbook for me. And this is after I was a grown-ass man. And stuff she had saved. And I have right here, it's not worth, I can't post it because I've got to take it apart and scan it and put it together. Midland Reporter Telegram from Monday, April 9th, 1990. So this is close to the time that Telegraph Road changed hands.
Right. We gave it away, basically.
You sold it. You gave it away, sold it, whatever.
There was a lot more money in it than we got for it.
Yeah, and I had moved, and the exchange issue was going away. And it actually sold to a guy, Mark Smith. We're still Facebook friends. He ran it for years and years.
Yeah.
So it says it's an article written by Paul H., and I guess it's Pose. It looks like they're trying to do a accent mark over it, but it's an apostrophe. Electronic bulletin board systems are some of the most popular applications of online telecommunications. And it talks about what they offer, and it says a typical system is simply someone's PC with a big, all capital letters, hard drive running special software that is set up to automatically receive calls.
Yes.
Yeah, 10 megabyte. Huge.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Drive.
Yeah, we were rocking.
It said at the time there were more than 14,000 free bulletin board systems around the country.
For the entire country.
And I love the way this is worded. The character of the board is determined by the sysop and his interests.
Yes.
And it says at the time, National Genealogical had one, Dallas Law, Catholic Information Network. All right, so here we go. It talks about public domain, blah, blah. You can meet local folks, and develop personal relationships. Didn't say anything about chat sex, but...
Yeah, that's kind of implied.
Meet in quotation marks. That means a lot in these days. It says there are 8 local boards currently operating in Midland. Phantom Mesa.
I remember that one.
Lucid Dimensions.
I remember that one.
Apache Land.
I remember that one.
Information Exchange.
Yeah.
Pandemonium.
I remember that one.
LB's Terminal.
I don't remember that one.
I can tell you about that one. It was hard to get on. I rarely did. Inner Circle, it says a new one, and now I was already kind of out of that deal.
Yeah.
And right there in the middle, baby, Telegraph Road.
Yes.
There she is. And I want to, I'm going to post the picture. I'm going to put it up right here, but I'm going to show it to Jim. He hasn't seen this.
I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, look at there.
All right. That was our card.
These were our cards that we had printed out.
Yes.
And I'm going to put up the picture, and I'm going to have it up right now. These are all stock photos. 8N1 is your, in the top left corner, those are your settings. Stop bits, parity, and...
What was it again?
8N1, 8 bits, no parity, one stop bit.
Right.
Yeah. And 312, 2400, that means your baud rates.
Right.
That we supported 300, 1200, and 2400 bauds.
Yes.
915 was the area code back then.
Yes. I remember getting these printed.
Yeah, and the sysops, Matt, Lynn, and Jim.
Yes.
And
And those were our real numbers at the time. We gave people our real telephone numbers.
There was Mark Smith jumped on board with us at one point, and when it got big, and I got a real job, and
Yeah, I think
all
I went
that
off to
stuff.
college at that point.
Yeah, you'd gone off to college, and so we had Mark Smith, we had Lynn was still around, sweet guy, and this other guy, Jack Hodges in Odessa, was helping us. He was he was medically disabled, and he helped out. So
yes,
the sysops were Matthew, Mark, Lynn, and Jack.
Yes,
you remember that?
Yes, yes, that is. It's so. That's a scary. Oh, that was amazing, man.
Yeah. I found I told you I was going to drop that on you at the last minute, so.
Thanks. Yeah, that's. I'm trying not to cry.
But now, we actually from the little cockpit of Telegraph Road, we saw things get a lot bigger,
real quick.
You got us on WorldLink. Do you remember that?
Yes.
How did I know I've screwed that up? Do you remember how that worked?
So it was at a certain point in time. It would take our.
Would you like another round?
I would.
Keep going.
It would. This was before the internet, so let's talk about it. At a certain point in time, every night, the computers would kick everybody off, and then the different BBSs would call each other and exchange messages. So if you wanted to contact someone in another state and you didn't want to pay long distance call or that kind of thing, you could send an email across WorldLink. I think it was WorldLink. And it would relay the message for you every night and relay it to the other BBSs. So it was a really, really early form of true system-to-system email.
Yeah. And again, if you think it's crazy now when you're looking at a text or Facebook message or email, when are they going to respond? If you were talking to somebody on WorldLink, you had to wait for that update at whatever it was set for.
Right. And usually it was like 2 or 3 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah.
There was a time when the long distance rates dropped. They started having these cheap long distance rates at a certain time, and that's when these systems would start dialing each other.
Yeah. Wow, those are crazy. You may not remember this story. You weren't there, but I probably told you about it. This guy in Odessa, Jack, he's passed away now. He was injured and had a nerve disease that killed him over a number of years. And he was around Telegraph Road a lot. He didn't have much better to do.
Right. And he was a great guy.
Yeah, he was a cool dude. And in fact, I want to say he was the one that got married or almost got married.
That sounds right.
Yeah, but
well,
anyway.
there was this one little girl that was always on that they were really close.
Yeah, I remember that. But anyway, he couldn't drive,
right,
because of that nerve disease, and he was coming to Midland from his home in Odessa for some reason, and wanted to meet us and see Telegraph Road.
Right, and we didn't necessarily meet all these people.
Yeah, it was rare that we did, except for the parties.
Right,
and he came back, and it was in back room of our house. I lived in a trailer, and it was on a desk. I still have my computer's still on that desk.
Yeah.
You got it free from an oil company.
You're right. I remember that.
Yeah. I cannot get rid of that desk. I've had it for years. Telegraph Road was on that very desk.
Yes.
And
now that has implications for the sex chat that occurred on that desk.
So much dirty on that desk. And he came back and he looked, and it was an IBM XT clone.
Yeah, a very cheap clone that I got from ESI Supply.
Yeah, and I remember ESI. The top was off of it because the power supply had burned out. You didn't have another. Neither one of us had any money. And you got one off of something out of your garage that was bigger than the computer.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yes, it was a Franken monster of a power supply.
So this
you could arc weld with this thing.
Yeah, it was just this pile of junk with a monitor, and then one day the monitor blew up.
Yes.
I can't remember why, but and again
back to my pile of junk, but yes.
Well, you didn't have we didn't
have a monitor. Monitors were hard to come by.
I can't remember. I think I think I got one from my mom's
That
work.
would probably be true because monitors were hard to come by.
I think they had, you know what, at that time, this is why I love doing this podcast, is because so much comes back and we got plenty of time. But at the time, I do remember this. I think I got it right. These are monochrome, the old green monochrome.
Yes, these were all monochrome.
But we had the badass eye relieving orange.
You're right, the
monochrome.
amber. It was
amber.
officially amber.
Amber. My mother's office was phasing out amber because whatever software they were using back in that day, Lotus 123 or whatever, was getting to where you had to have color.
Yes.
You had to have the 3 color, the RGB.
Right.
And somebody felt pity upon us,
and donated it,
or maybe they didn't even know they donated. I can't remember.
Well, and it may have been dumpster diving too.
Yeah, it could have been dumpster dove. I don't know, but anyway, we came up with another one. But I can remember. This is cool. I can remember having a problem to fix. And there was an F key that would print the screen. Now, when I say print screen, it
physically
printed the screen.
Yes.
Zzzt, zzzt, zzzt. And I know that printer was bought from my mom's office.
Yes.
It was an old,
It was an old dot matrix.
Dot matrix printer.
Yeah.
So, again, kids, watch the movies.
I recognize the sound.
Yep.
You did it perfectly, by the way.
Yeah, and so what we would do is I had memorized all the keystrokes so well. Somebody would say, okay.
You could fly blind.
Yeah, what's the problem? Okay, blah, blah needs to be fixed.
Print screen.
Okay, F6, F2, enter, A, B, C, D, arrow, arrow, arrow. I think I'm there, print screen. Yes! And then you can see the screen. Yep, we're there. And so that's how we got by for a while.
And the U.S. FAA, when the radar goes down, use a very similar technique when they lose track of aircraft because the radar goes down.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, and I remember fondly on it. When you're a kid, the thing what attracted me, I remember the first thing. Not unlike today, but imagine being 16, 17 years old during the summer. You can't be out, doing John Hughes movies every night. You're gonna have a lot of boring nights, and I'd be sitting on the edge of the bed playing guitar or whatever.
Right.
But to be able in the middle of the night to get on that computer and call up a board and just kind of see what's going on.
Yeah. You were in a unique position.
Yeah, I really was.
And honestly, thank you for burning all of that time, because I always felt guilty that I hefted this responsibility upon you.
Well, I felt guilty because I didn't have the money to do all that. I mean, you loaned or gave me my first probably 3 computers.
Really? I don't remember.
You had an Atari 400.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, I did remember having
the top
it, but
was missing, but you had an Atari 400.
Yeah.
You gave it to me, and I cut my teeth on that thing, and I
Really?
wrote some papers in high school on it.
Really?
And then next one, I think you gave me, an 800 pop. That may not have been you.
That may not have been me. But honestly, I did have an 800 that I'm sure I gave it away. I don't know to who.
I got it. I remember when you graduated, year before me.
Yeah.
Your mother bought you an AT.
Yes.
Remember the AT? Okay,
yes.
So IBM PC, and let's talk processor times.
Okay.
Okay, this is going to mean a lot to the geeks.
Right. Yes. This will put you to sleep. But yes.
Right. The IBM PC came out, the big metal one, 8088 processor.
Yes.
4.7, right?
4.77 megahertz.
4.77 megahertz.
Right.
Okay. So I think my processor that I'm crunching the last video on is 4.3 gigahertz.
Right.
Yeah.
Orders of magnitude over orders of magnitude.
So the XT
was 10.
Was it 10?
It was 10 when you pushed the turbo button.
Well, and if you didn't have the turbo button, I never will forget the day we had an XT, and you brought a V20. You remember those? V10, V20?
Processor, yes, because it could run CPM and DOS.
But it ran it like
at like 20.
10, no, it was like 10 or 12.
10 or 12. Yeah, it was
10 or
12.
because when you that next step was AT,
Right.
and you brought a 20 megahertz AT.
Yes.
And I remember I could not wait to go to work the next day. And we were allowed, this is true. I'm not saying this just to make me not look like a criminal. We really did. We were allowed and encouraged to take software home.
So you could talk about it.
So you could learn it.
Yeah.
And
So you could tell the
it.
customers about it.
Yeah. So I couldn't tell you jack shit about Peachtree, but I knew every game in there. You know, I knew all that.
Right.
Do you remember Dragon's Lair?
Yes.
Okay. You right there. Go look up Dragon's Lair. It was a coin-op video game on a laser disc.
Yes.
Okay, so if you imagine after seeing pixelated aliens, dun 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 dun, you know, Defender. Yeah. Imagine after seeing that, you're playing a freaking cartoon, man.
Yes.
Right? That was Dragon's Lair. You had whatever the biggest, baddest, what was before VGA? EGA.
EGA,
You
yes.
had EGA, Enhanced Graphics Adapter.
Yes, yes.
That ran 20 freaking megahertz was how fast that AT was.
Right. And I think it had like 64 colors or something like that.
It was a monster.
Yeah.
And I remember when I pulled up in the driveway after work that day, you were already at my house.
Yes, I think so.
My mom had let you in.
Are you here yet?
Yeah. And you had mentioned wanting to put Telegraph Road on that computer, and then but you were messing with it, and then we started bringing home really cool games.
Yeah.
And then we wound up leaving it there and just left my door open, and we came and went. You played games, and I played games.
Yes. Yeah. I remember that. I remember that very fondly. Yeah. And we spent huge amounts of time. Telegraph Road, I think, went downhill because we had that computer.
Yeah. Well, and there were a lot of dynamics. In 1990, I moved on, became a grown-ass man.
You still haven't become a grown-ass man, so I'm
just going
to crush that rumor right now.
Yeah, but it went over to Mark, and at that time, I remember checking in and playing a sub game that we did not have. Mark put it on. It was really cool.
Yes, and he took it to the next level.
He
added at least 4 lines last I remember.
And it was trunked, so there was only one number.
Right.
Because back when we had it,
there was 2 numbers.
You had to run down the list.
Right.
So he kept just the original number, and it would roll over. And he put a bunch of cool games on it, and I remember the kind of the social aspect of it going away.
Right. It became I don't know. I just lost interest. I can't put my finger on exactly what changed, but it was no longer interesting.
Well, for me, what it came down to was it was great to play a game, and if you needed software, and back then, it's not much different than now. If you want something to do addresses or keep phone numbers or...
you wanted an app.
Yeah, they're little simple things, you know, like just like you use on your phone. People used to do that with their home computer. And you could go to Telegraph Road, you'd find something, and if you liked it, you're supposed to snail mail the guy like a $5 bill.
check.
I wonder how much money those guys ever got. But it was only those kind of things, and the social aspect of it was there, and it just wasn't. There were so many of them, and then that first freaking AOL disc showed up in my mailbox.
Right, and that killed it. Yeah,
that was it. The bulletin boards died.
Yes,
they were over. AOL was the precursor to the internet, and it was just a giant bulletin board.
Right,
and it was a graphical user interface.
Yes,
so it was very pretty. And unfortunately, and I'm going to sound arrogant, please don't everybody be offended, but it was very easy to use.
Yes, it was. It lowered the you had to be this high to ride, now became you only had to be this high to ride.
The slide into the ditch, man.
It did. It truly then it became everybody could start using the internet, and once everybody start using the internet, you realize how much you really don't like other people.
Well, and you couldn't have a conversation.
No.
It was
everything
impossible.
Became political. Everything became charged.
Yeah.
And fragmented. So the bulletin boards used to only have maybe 5 message boards, and they were usually grouped around games, different games, or whatever was going on in your community. And then AOL came along, and there were hundreds, thousands maybe of different message boards, and people were all passionate about it to the point of, you know what, I have nothing to say.
Yeah, it wasn't. And then you get all the chat boards were immediately, hookup boards.
Yeah, that's true.
Became an enormous gay platform.
Yes.
It was, they were tight about software.
Yeah, they were tight about not pirating, yes.
Not pirating software.
Right.
But, I actually dated some girls I met on AOL when that was back in the day, before internet.
So I'm going to say something here that you may find interesting. Telegraph Road, you remember the song, the actual words to the song?
Oh, yeah.
You remember how it starts out nice, and that, then came the lawyers, then came... then there was a war.
Yeah. And there was
it really does line up with the song.
Wow, it does.
It does. I just realized this.
And then came the trains and the trucks with their loads, and the dirty old track became the Telegraph Road. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it does. You have to listen to that song, Telegraph Road by Dire Straits.
We need to put a link to the video in it.
Yeah, we really do. It is
that's prophetic. I don't know.
It really, wow. I never thought of that.
I didn't either.
Wow. Man, that gave me chills.
Just blew his mind.
Yeah, it does. Because you think about it now, and you're bored in your doctor's waiting room. You pull it up, and my cousin got an ass wart removed. That's great.
Yes, yeah. And you don't even think second about it.
And the secretary still hates Donald Trump. Who knew? Right?
Who knew?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And really, it is. I'm gonna have to go listen to that song now.
We are, brother. I love it, and I tell you what, I don't want to. We're gonna keep you for another episode or two.
Sounds great.
Definitely. I want to do this. We're at a point where, man, I just got to stop talking. That's great.
Yeah,
I love it, and we will come back with it. We'll shoot another episode, because I want to hear you talk.
Okay.
About what's going on now, because it just fascinates me. Anyway, folks, my buddy Jim Storms,
and Matt Van.
Thank you, and thanks for coming back to the 80s with us. Cheers, my brother.
Cheers.